So in ancient Egypt, as I was saying, the entire civilization was a civilization based on the power of the magically uttered word to bring about magical effects. In the afterlife, you have to know all the spells, and your very pronunciation of the spells. There's a ritual called the opening of the mouth, where the dead body, the mummified body, is stood up, and an implement is touched to the lips to give it the power to pronounce the proper spells in the afterlife that will open up magically certain doors and push certain demons away. The power of the word is very precise and very exact. And it's also interesting that in Derrida is associated, is very anxious about the trace and the trace's power of self-erasure, which is another interesting thing that he has in common with the oral tradition of the Egyptians. And he is moving into a period now in Plato's Pharmacy. We'll see this even more, becoming fascinated with the Egyptian tradition. For good reason, because it's a tradition that privileges the voice, the vocal, very much so over writing. Also in the Egyptian tradition, if you wrote on a tomb, if you wanted to write the word for a dangerous animal, such as a snake or a scorpion, you had to put the hieroglyph up there in broken form. It had to be crossed out so as not to actually evoke the negative evil power, to actually bring it toward you if it isn't broken or doesn't have a line drawn through it. So everything, the Egyptians were very concerned to erase signifiers on their monuments as a means of anathematizing the previous pharaoh's power. Akhenaten, for example, went around sending armies of men with chisels to go around the land, erasing the signifiers associated with the god Amun, and also any signifiers that listed his father's name, so as to neutralize the power of those older cults. And Derrida does something similar too when he crosses words out in order to neutralize the metaphysics of presence that they represent. He often crosses out the word is, for example, to neutralize and efface the metaphysics of presence, the metaphysics of being that the word is represents. The other thing too is that for the Egyptians, Egyptian hieroglyphics is not a language in which the signifier's relationship to the signified is arbitrary. The way that Saussure says that the signifier's relation to the signified is always arbitrary. It is not arbitrary, though. This is only true, I think, in alphabetic traditions. It's not the case in the case of Egyptian hieroglyphics, in which the image is still, the hieroglyphic is still image bound, and it is still magically bound to the actual thing that it is meant to represent. So the relationship of the hieroglyph to the concept, thing, deity, god, monster that it represents is not arbitrary at all. There's a direct, ontologically grounded, magically substantive, essentialist relationship of the signifier to the signified in that tradition. It's only with the advent of alphabetic writing that the Hebrews bring in that is specifically, as Willem Flusser puts it in his writings, that is specifically hostile to images, that choose images up. The alphabetic tradition is a tradition that came into being amongst both the Greeks and the Hebrews as a means of criticizing and neutralizing the power of the images of the mythical consciousness structure, which runs around in circles, whereas texts occur in lines, and so the bringing in of the text is meant to cut the power of the Gebzerian mythical circle and to neutralize its power, to download the two-dimensional circle into one-dimensional lines of text. And the alphabetical tradition severs the signifier from the signified and does indeed render its relationship, as Saussure says, arbitrary from that point on, since it divests, the letters of the alphabet divest themselves of their relationship to images. They no longer have a relationship to images. It's strictly sound-based and also visual. And as a result of that, the relationship with the signifier does indeed become arbitrary. Its relationship to the signified is arbitrary from that point on. So that's one little caveat to throw in there. So anyway, this is the upshot of Derrida's presentation of Hegel's Semiology, which he says that Hegel situates within psychology and that Saussure also inherits this, and it aligns the metaphysical tradition with a privilege of the voice and speech, which is immediate and closer to being, has more direct access, almost in an oracular sense, to being, to the spirit, to the absolute, and writing becomes a mere supplement in that tradition, something that's a mere appendix, something that's merely added on to supplement the tradition of speech, as in the case of Rousseau or in the case of Hegel. And so that is the upshot of this essay, and you can see that Derrida then is paving the way for these other essays in which he will begin to move into other directions with his deconstructive theory.